Hey guys, it's Mary and welcome back to Study Journey. So it's ACT season and I've been thinking about this for a while and it's actually really late right now, but I thought I would make this video because ACT is coming up, or it's already been for a lot of people, and I thought it would be nice to share some last minute tips like the night before or like the week before, because I know a lot of people who haven't studied for the ACT and I thought this would be useful. This is going to be sectioned into general tips and then I will go on into further detail about each section. So without further ado, let's get on with the video. Okay, so general tips. The first tip is to get a copy of the ACT test and look at all the questions and read through the instructions. So I have an ACT practice test right here, and you would know that whenever you open it up, there are instructions for each of the sections, and you're going to read through all these, so by the time it comes to test day, you don't have to waste time reading the instructions. You can get these free ACT tests on the ACT website. And then the second thing you should do if it's the night before, it is to do a few problems of each of these tests and to get an idea of what these tests are going to be like. Okay, sorry about the lighting. At first, the types of questions might seem a little bit weird or unusual, but once you get a hang of it, it'll get better. And then finally, you're going to use the letter of the day when it comes to test day, because then you will have a better chance of getting it right. So whatever letter of the day you pick, like A and F or B and G, then you would just pick that consistently when you don't know or you have no idea what it is. But never leave it a question blank. Letter of the day is best for guessing, but you have to always answer all the questions. And then finally, use the process of elimination and also pacing, which is you will use the now, later, or never method. So now is you know you can do it, so you're going to do it now. Later is maybe I can get it after I do some more questions. And then never is I have no idea what this is. I'm not even going to attempt it because that's going to waste my time. Okay, now we got the general tips out of the way, we're going to move on to the timing of these tests. So English test is 45 minutes, 75 questions with 5 passages. The English lesson is just grammar and all that stuff. So that gives you about 9 minutes for each passage. So make sure you're pacing yourself. And then for the math section is 60 minutes and 60 questions. The questions at the beginning don't usually take as much time, so you can probably spend less on those and then wait till the end, and there's some harder problems that you can take longer time on. And then for the reading test, it's 35 minutes, 40 questions with 4 passages. That gives you 8 to 9 minutes for each question, so you're going to want to pace yourself and not spend more than 3 or 4 minutes on the passage itself. Science section is 35 minutes and 40 questions with about 6 to 7 passages, so you'll have about 5 to 6 minutes each. This one is something that you really have to pace yourself on, and I will go into detail later about how you can do that. And the writing test, which is optional, is 40 minutes with 1 essay. So moving on to specifics. Firstly is the English section or grammar. One main thing you have to remember, if you don't remember anything else, is the 4 C's. Complete, consistent, clear, and concise. What this means is that you have to make sure the sentence is complete with your subject and your verb, and then it has to be consistent, so there's a subject and verb agreement, the tenses are matching, and the numbers are matching. What I mean by numbers matching is like plural or singular, that has to match. And then, another tip is that the verb in the ACT is usually not next to the subject. So for example, there's a sentence, her third album, Teenage Dream, had 5 consecutive number 1 singles. A streak of hits that was last accomplished by Michael Jackson. So, and a streak of hits that was last accomplished by Michael Jackson, you would think that hits is the subject, so that means that it will be a streak of hits that were last accomplished, but we can see that a streak of hits is a one singular streak, so that would actually be singular, so that's why it was. You can do more practice on that, but that was just an example. And the clear means that this meaning of the sentence is clear. Usually you will pick direct sentences if it asks for that. So for example, the man builds a house, instead of a sentence that will be like, the house is built by a man. And then concise means that there are no repeats, For example, if the sentence was the veteran who served in the army, we already know the veteran is someone who served in the army. You wouldn't pick that answer and you would just pick the answer that says the veteran. And also, no change is a legitimate answer, so don't be afraid to pick it. That has a 25% chance, since there are 4 answer choices in the English section, that has a 25% chance that you're gonna pick that answer, so you're going to have to pick it sometime. And don't be afraid to pick it. And then here's some general ACT English tips. So the comma before the and is always utilized on the ACT. So whenever there's a list and then it's comma and, you pick the one with that comma. And then period equals semicolon equals comma and a conjunction. These are all the same things. So if you have a sentence that ends with a period or separated by semicolon, or it's comma and that means that these two are complete sentences. If the correct answer is a period, they're not gonna put answer choices with period, semicolon, and tell you to pick between those because they're both right answers. So that means if they're both on the answer choice, then that means it's not going to be a complete sentence and you have to check it or pick something else. And then it, apostrophe s, is it is. ITS, without any apostrophes, means the possessive of its. And then it's, and then apostrophe, that is not possible. Remember that. For strategy questions or longer questions, for example, which choice provides the most specific reason for? The keyword here in that question will be specific, so you're going to pick the longer answer for this one actually. But usually for the English section, shorter answers are usually right because they're more concise. But when it asks for specifics, you have to pick the longer answer. Now, moving on to the math section. So when you do the math section, I suggest you start from the beginning because it's usually easier and it gets harder. You are always going to want to plug in the answers if possible. So like rework the problem with the answer choice and plug it back into the problem or the equation. Read the question and mark the key words. You do not want to miss something because you missed a part of the question where it's asking you for the product and you added it or something. And then when you're checking your answers, make sure your answer choice makes sense. What this means is that if it's asking for distance, it's not going to be a negative answer, so you can immediately cross those out. Questions with shapes or diagrams, if it looks right, it probably is right. So for example, if the triangle looks like it has a 90-degree angle, it's probably a right triangle. Even if it says not drawn to scale, it will usually give you a diagram that is similar to what the diagram actually is supposed to be. And then when you're answering the word questions, translate the words to math. For example, up means to multiply, and then you're going to know that you're going to multiply something in that problem. And then finally, you have to know your properties and equations. I will link down below a formula sheet with most of the ACT formulas and properties. So you might want to review that if you're not really up to date with your math. Now moving on to reading. So when you read the passage, in my last ACT video where I went into detail about ACT and how I prepped for it, which I will also link down below, I said that I skimmed the passage. But I found out since I've been practicing for a while, honestly I haven't been doing it that much lately, but I've done it for a good bit and I realized that skimming is not the best method for me. I would prefer to actually skim the whole passage or like read the whole passage, but just in a faster pace than normal, because as we know, the reading section is not enough time for you to actually go into detail because you only get about 3 to 4 minutes to read that passage. So we were just going to try to get the main idea of it and make sure what you read goes into your brain and it doesn't come out the other side, because you don't want to do that because that is going to waste your time. And then for answering the questions, it's always going to be now, later, or never. Answering some of the now questions will actually help with the later or maybe even never questions, because when you answer the questions, sometimes it tells you more information just by answering the questions and you'll know more. When the passage gives you a line number or a paragraph section, go to it and then put your finger on it. You do not want to look at the wrong line when trying to find the word or trying to find the phrase. So you're going to put your finger on it and then skim the section before going back and answering the question. Process of elimination is also very important for this section. When you use process of elimination, make sure that what you are eliminating is truly not right. And also, the answer choices are probably going to give you something that is something that you've read in the passage and you would immediately think, oh, I've read that, so it's going to be right. But you have to read carefully because a lot of them, something is reworded or changed and that will be the wrong answer actually, so make sure you check on that. And then finally, make sure that it is in the passage. So if something is never stated before, then you're not going to pick it because we're not going to infer unless it asks you to infer. So moving on to the science section. What I suggest is that you glance at the graph or diagram and then just go straight to the questions. When you go to the questions, it will actually, most of the time, tell you where to refer back to. So keep your finger on what it says. So for example, if it says figure 1 or diagram 1, you're going to turn back to figure 1 or diagram 1 and you're going to put your finger on it. Then keep on reading and see what it's referring to. So what I mean by that is like if there is a chart, there's going to be like columns. So you're going to see if it's telling you 4 meters or 6 meters or 8 meters. If it says 4 meters, you put your finger on the 4 meters in the first diagram or whatever diagram it referred to. And then you're going to see what it is actually asking you. So sometimes it might just be as simple as finding that and then going to the next element and seeing what the responding measures are. Or it might ask for you to infer what it might be if there was another experiment conducted in between those two or something like that. And that is when you will try to find like the middle of the two measurements. So the key thing in the science part is that the question is the most important part. What I mean by that is that make sure you actually understand the problem because that is going to be the key factor in deciding if you get the answer right or wrong. So make sure you know what the question is asking, know how to solve the problem and where to find it. And then finally, you go to the answers and then see if it's there. If the question is something that doesn't refer to anything in the graphs, then it's probably going to be in that little blurb or paragraph before the diagram. I wouldn't usually read that until it asks you for something that's in the passage or the paragraph before, and then you go back to read it. And then there's always going to be one section or one passage on the science section that is going to be comparing and contrasting different experiments or point of views of scientists or something like that. And it's usually going to be like passages, or it's not passage, but like paragraphs of each description of what the scientist thinks, and then you're going to have to compare and contrast. What I suggest for you to do is actually read that passage first, skim through it, underline the key points or the key differences that each of these scientists or experiments have in common, and then go to the answer of the question. Now that that's done, we're going to look at what you're going to do the day before and the day of, or the morning of the test. So the day before the test, which is actually for me right now, don't do any more tests because that is honestly not really useful unless you're just going to try and do a few problems of each test. But if you already have an idea of what the test is on, you don't have to force yourself to do a whole ACT test because you don't want to burn out the night before. Make sure you are well rested, and I suggest that the day before you exercise or move your body some, and that actually is going to help you sleep better at night. And then also eat well. Don't eat anything you normally wouldn't because the worst case would be you had to use bathroom really bad in the middle of the test. You don't want that. And then also pack your stuff. So make sure you get the calculator that is approved. And then your number 2 pencil. You have to use the number 2 pencil. You can't use mechanical pencils or anything like that. And then make sure you pack your ID if needed, which is most cases, unless you're going to take it at school, which in this case we don't need it. But usually you need your identification ID and all that stuff. Just check the ACT website for that. Now moving on to the day of. So you wake up in the morning and you're about to go take the test. What do? First thing you do is make sure you eat a good breakfast. And even if you're not a breakfast person, you need something to help you fuel through that, 4 hours of testing. And let me tell you, this makes a huge difference. If you eat well, your brain is automatically going to be moving faster. And don't try to drink like energy drinks to help that, but rather eat a good breakfast. And fuel is going to help you push through that testing, because testing actually uses a lot of brain power and it's going to be really tiring. So you don't want your stomach to be growling in the middle of testing. Next, you can bring a snack and water. Even though you can't take it into the testing room, you're usually going to have a break between the second and third test, so the math and reading test. And between that, you're going to have a break. And then in that break, you can quickly eat something, drink some water. Don't drink too much though. Use the bathroom, etc. And then also, just last thing, clear your mind and don't stress about it. The ACT, one good thing about the ACT is that you can take it as many times as you want. If you've already prepared for it, you shouldn't be stressing. And even if you didn't prepare for it, it's too late to stress, and that's not going to help. If you didn't actually prepare for it, I hope this helped you. And if you did prepare for it, I hope you can go in there with confidence. Also, remember that you can always take it again, so it's fine. And I think that's it. So I hope this helped you guys and you guys enjoyed this video. For anyone who's going to take the ACT, good luck, get a good night's sleep, and you're gonna do amazing.